Okay, let's look at 2038. This is an 18XX game based in space. And you have to forgive my voice. I'm being very quiet because my wife's room is next door. She threatens to move to a different room if I'm going to be down here and making noise, but I think I can get away with this. And she took pity on me and is letting me use my cooler room. Yeah, it's kind of weird. I've got like tools and implements in with the games, whatever. Things are always in chaos in my existence. All right. So my history with this game, I was very, very excited by it to begin with. It's got some different concepts from some of the other 18xx's. For example, you're exploring. It's got a luck factor. You're going to be pulling tiles from a bag to determine what is present in each space. And then instead of particularly trying to hook up locations, you get tiles that look like this, that indicate the resources that are available on them. Instead of trying to hook up locations and you just get cash for those locations, instead what you're trying to do is you're trying to haul these materials back. So ships have slightly different values. They have a speed value to the left and an amount of crap they can carry value to the right. And each ship type has two different types, a faster scout style ship and a slower tug style ship. They're the same price. Well, no, they're actually not. No, once you get up into the higher levels, the tugs end up more expensive. But you choose one when you buy it. You pay the price for that, and then you're stuck with that particular version of the ship as long as you have it in play, basically. Let's see, what else do we have? We have a bunch of private companies. In addition to the privates are actually included with these certificates, you're going to have minor companies. This game has multiple means of capitalizing your companies, which makes it kind of sound like a complex game. Interestingly enough, the actual rules for it are just 4 pages. It doesn't go into the rule set isn't particularly useful. Probably if you've never played an XX game, it's probably pretty rough going. So Tim Jim included this Let's Play thing, which I always hated these. They did not help me understand, but they basically, let you do. It's essentially a playthrough. And then another 4, and that's 4 pages, and another 4 pages of notes. Well, 3 pages of notes with some stuff here. Now we're gonna get one of these out of the box as well. You also have your actual major corporations over here, and those corporations have multiple different things on them. Instead of just station tokens, they have bases. They start the game with a base printed on the board, but they are able to convert one of these asteroids into a base eventually. They have refueling stations. Each base has a slot for refueling that will allow your ship to charge up and move further. And finally, you have claims, which are a very important thing. You flag resources, and then no one else can use them. And on top of that, the resources have 2 values on them. That's the value when you deliver. The left-hand side value is the unclaimed value. The right-hand side is the claimed value. So you get more cash if you've got a claim on the resource, rather than just using the regular, just buying it from the miners each time or whatever. And that's what I guess the reduction in price is referring to. Each of these objects has its own price. The claims is split into 2 prices, one for the first claim per turn, and the second one for the second claim per turn. It has a fixed bank, $10,000, so I had to pull some of my chips out, so there aren't a lot of 500s in there. It's a small bank. Okay, about my history about this game. Yeah, I was really excited about it. It's got so many ideas that I really think are awesome, it actually handles some of the things that, it takes a different view on some of the things that I kind of wondered about in Year 1830, in terms of like, well, should the money in the bank pool really be, or should the shares in the bank pool really be paying into the company? What's up with that? That some of the other games do too as well, and we'll get to this in a moment. And with the different ways of capitalizing, a lot of other factors in it, it seemed really, really exciting to me. It added 1835's minor companies, essentially, each of which has a special ability, which is very cool. That's one of the ways you can turn corporations. When you create growth corporations, you create them out of those. Just all kind of nifty stuff. But the problem with it is, and I'm playing with the optional game where you throw out one of these, that's not enough. These ships become the blocker. You may not get to these at all. So a game could easily finish where no one wants to actually buy one of the 6, I'm going to call them trains, spaceships, it doesn't really make a difference. But anyway, one of the 6 ships. And this is the same problem that 1870 over there has, which is you could easily get to a position where nobody wants to actually do one of them. I came up with some very, very brutal differences to it, but I'm going to play it as written so that you can see that. And I was just talking to somebody recently, a guy who stopped by and played Poseidon with us, actually. And he says in his group they remove more trains. And yeah, I can see where that would be a very cool game. Okay, let's take a look at what this very brief set of rules actually contains in it. Let's get the actual rules. The Let's Play is fucking useless unless you don't know what you're doing with 18xx at all, and you need to kind of be walked through in baby steps. But this is actually really a nice, concise rule book if you're familiar with XX. So each player starts out with 300 bucks. A pile of bid markers, which they're going to use for bidding on the privates. On the other side of these, there's used mine markers. The claims also have used markers, so that you indicate that you still have the claim, but it's been used. What do we got here? Oh, there was another thing in this. You have this concept of the Asteroid League, sort of like the Prussian in 1835, right? Or maybe the Canadian National in 56. And to me, that's very exciting. I kind of like the way things merge into these big national lines and how that all works, and how you want to manipulate your situation as to whether or not you want to fall into it. I always like that as well. There's a short game which takes out $6,000 and 2 of these ships. The game is going to end in one of 2 ways, like 1830, player bankruptcy, or the bank running out of money. When the bank runs out of money, we finish up the operating rounds, throw the rest of the cash in, so that we have enough to keep track with. Okay. The game starts out with an initial stock round, as most do. And it's going to start with an 1830 style auction, where you can drop, a bid on and say, hey, I'm willing to bid 105 for this. I believe whenever you bid, you have to, you can bid the starting value on it. You don't have to exceed the starting value on your bid. Okay. Each bid has to be at least $5 more than any previous bids that have been on there. And your money is allocated if you put a bid, which means until somebody overbids you, you don't have that money to play with. Like in 1830, if someone does overbid you, you don't have to keep bidding in on it. You can go find other things to bid in. Let me make sure the allocation works the way I think it does. Okay, so This rulebook doesn't really go into too much, but my understanding was always that you tried to use the 1830 rules where applicable. So yeah, if you're overbid, you have that money to play with then. Oh no, maybe it's when it's paid out. Anyway, I'm not too worried about that. I don't think people are going to. Yeah, because I don't see it in the actual rule book. It may be hidden in the Let's Play. I wish they had added 2 more pages to this and had a complete rule book. It is one of the problems. Okay. If all the privates sell out, some of these come with shares. So these guys come with TSI shares. This one comes with 2 TSI shares. If they all sell out, then you can continue on into here, buy additional TSI shares, and the Resource Unlimiteds will then be available for purchase. The companies actually come out in kind of a pulsed state, which is to say, first, the TSI is available, sort of. The RU is available immediately as soon as you hit that first stock round as well, though, and that presidency can be started. Then the next 3 companies are available as a second tier. You don't have to buy them in particular order. They're all available. Once those all have floated, I believe, then you can go down to the 3rd tier. Same thing with the 2nd tier. You have to have the RU float. I believe that's how it works. Oh, we'll see that in a moment, I think. Nope. Once they're launched, you don't have to float them. So once somebody buys the presidency. Okay. Okay. If you put a bid in on one of these 6 miners, and the bid's higher than the initial amount, you get 50% of the difference between the two. So for example, if I put 160 bid on here, I would get 30 extra bucks in the company treasury. They start with 100 for free, but you know, like if you bid 160 on Fastbuck, he walks away with 30 bucks of it, and you only have 130 in his little company. But it does help his company out. So bidding doesn't completely hose you. You do put that some of that extra money in there. You're able to sell a single certificate, or no, as many certificates as you like. You're allowed to buy 1 certificate on each stock round. You got a 2-dimensional stock track, and we got what goes here. Each time shares are sold, doesn't matter who it's by, drops it by a layer for each share sold. If something's sold out, it moves up a box, and paying out and withholding dividends moves it to the right or moves it to the left. No, I'm sorry. It moves it to the left if you don't pay out. If you pay out half dividends, it moves it to the right 1 box. If you pay out full dividends, it moves it to the right 2 boxes. So you have an easier way to make cash in this game. You can still make your stock value. You don't lose stock value as long as you pay out half. So that's kind of an interesting turn on there. You've got a limited par set here, which are shown here. Growth corporations, though, will start at only 10 bucks, which makes them very, very cheap to buy into. Once you sell a share, you can't buy it back. It's kind of interesting. Poseidon, you can buy them back. But okay, so like I said, there's a couple different ways to start a company. When you want to launch a normal company, you set its par value, you pay twice that value, and you buy the president's certificate. And now it's available for other people to buy. They can't sell it. Until it operates, only the president can sell it. So if you're the president and you see somebody's going to take it over, you may want to dump it at that point, just to make sure that you get something and you're not just holding those shares, because if the presidency gets taken from you, you can no longer sell it. If you want to launch something as a growth corporation, it can only be done in phases 2 and 3. Now these are based on when the trains come out, and they're actually the same number as the train. So you start in phase 1 with the with the one little train. And when the first 2 trains go out, you go into phase 2. So you have a lot of different phases in the game. That's good because some of the games kind of break things up into just a couple of phases, and then they add special rules in between, and that can cause a nightmare for me. So during phases 2 and 3, before the Asteroid League forms, you're allowed to start growth corporations. With a growth corporation, you have to have an independent company. You ditch the independent company, okay, and you get the president's share of one of these corporations during your stock turn, and that'll count as your purchase. The independent company comes out of the game. Its cash, spaceships, and certificates all go to the corporation. This certificate, which will keep its special ability until it disappears. And the growth base marker, there are extra markers in here. I'm trying to find them. I've never seen the RU started as a growth company. So for example, this is the RU's growth base company. This would go on the space where the miner already started. They're each linked to one of these bases. And let's see what else. So that gives you a free extra base. Any claims that it has, the corporation may, I believe, must take over. And its part value is marked at 67. Okay. So you can't, it's not a $10 buy, it's $10 shares there. If you want to buy it from the bank pool, it comes out of, it costs you 67 bucks a pop, and that's, you know, for the game. So those work kind of like 1830, where shares are available, and they'll be here in the public shares box. That's public corporations that are available to be sold, and the growth are in here. Now, there's a difference of where the money goes. A public corporation floats at 50% and starts with all fully capitalized, all the cash that it'll ever get. The growth corporation starts with the money that was on here, basically. But each share is going to give it 67 bucks that's bought out of the growth box. So it has a partial capitalization, but it's a crappy starting price automatically, and you can't do anything about that. Okay. The Asteroid League, these shares are trade-in shares. These guys can fall into the Asteroid League. If they don't end up as growth corporations, they will become the Asteroid League. I think it's almost guaranteed that some of them exist, so the Asteroid League's going to start, and it has a buttload of tokens. So even if it starts out with just a couple of these guys, it's still going to be pretty big compared to them in a lot of ways. Okay. Right. Players can pass instead of selling or buying stock. If everybody consecutively passed, the first player who passed becomes the first player in the next stock round. If all shares are held at the end of the stock round, the prices increase. For the operating rounds, the private companies get their fixed incomes, which are written on them. The miners do not have those. Then the independent companies operate 1 through 6, whichever ones exist. Then the corporations will operate in stock value order. Okay. And after all of that, you handle any used mines. They all get cleared up. Any claims that are flipped over to the used side get unflipped, just so that you can use them again in the next operating round. There are always 2 operating rounds between stock rounds. But the actual operations, running a route, is going to be starting a ship from a base belonging to that company. And then You fly around and pick stuff up at various places, marking them as used as need be. And then you have to get to another location, to a location that will take goods. Now, I believe a base will take goods, and these off-map bases will as well. They're not all off-map, yeah. There's no true off-map areas. You can fly into these and come back out. But you have to end your run in one of these. So you have to start in a base that you own and end your run in some base. And then you deliver your goods. And the basic idea is you get the cash value of the goods, and that's your run. And if you're running multiple ships for your run, each of them has to sail out and operate on its own. This can get kind of complicated because sometimes there are a lot of different pathways through this. You're not being blocked by tokens or anything. So you have a lot of different options that you can make your run out of. These little red things are transshipment points. You don't use them up, but you can grab a transshipment of the right value and you put that in your ship cargo hold. And if you deliver that somewhere, you get the cash. Make sure. So each spaceship can only pick up a transshipment once, but you can do multiple in the same round. Okay. Some places on the map give you bonuses. Like this gives you 20 extra bucks for each of these rares that you deliver. That's pretty cool. In addition to that, some of the companies like VP actually have a bonus. They give another 10 or 20 bucks for each rare. That'll each of the companies has its own special ability, and those special abilities can combine with the special abilities of the pilot. So like Mars Mining gives plus 10 for ice. Well, there's also Ice Finder, who gives an additional plus 10 for ice for the ship that he's piloting. So you can get more. Venus Prospectors likes rares. So even if they don't deliver them here, they still get plus 10 for each rare they deliver. A couple of the companies have slightly different advantages. TSI doesn't have much of an advantage, except that it's guaranteed to start first, and its first round it starts with this little weird ship, which can run four spaces without it carrying anything. Hey, why would I want to not carry anything? Okay, that's a good point. Somewhere we have to have discovery, because that may be something else they left out of here. Okay. It costs 1 movement point to enter a hex. If you have an empty blank hex and you want to find the tile there, you spend an extra movement point and you draw a new tile and show it there. Some people get to draw 2 tiles and pick one, whatever. Special abilities, right? Okay. Now, each tile that you discover gives you 10 bucks from the bank into the company treasury. Another way to make a little bit of income. Each spaceship can hit a refueling space once in an operating round, and I believe that adds 3. Yeah. It adds 3 more movement points up to its maximum at that moment. So, for example, well, that's not a good example. Trying to see one. Let's say I've got RU here, and then they've got a refueling slot there. It's hard to find the refueling. We'll put somebody else's there. And my spaceship, let's say I'm running this 3-2. Well, I can go 1, 2, and now I've still got 1 movement point left, If I add 3 to that, I go over its base movement point. So I can only refuel up to its movement point, so it would still have 3 left, and it could go to here. But it wouldn't have the 4 left. Like, you don't just automatically get that extra fuel. In general, that's not a big deal. Usually you spend more fuel by the time you hit your refueling station. Every now and then it's an issue. Okay. So your earnings are the sum of all the routes that you throw. And if it's a private company, then your earnings go 50% to the company, 50% to you. Always. There's no stocks involved in this at all. If it's a corporation, it's kind of your standard XX. You pay out or you don't. Except you can pay out half. And you calculate that as you normally would. One thing about the pilots, if they're running their own corporation, they fly all the ships. Their bonus counts for all the ships of their own little private minor or whatever. If they're associated with a growth company, or I don't think they can be associated with the Asteroid League. I think they're dead then. If they're associated with a growth company, they can only fly a single ship and give their bonus to that single ship, which can be a big deal. Of course, Fastbuck, he just gives you money, so it doesn't matter what ship he's flying. If you pay partial dividends, where you pay out half, your stock value goes up, and 50% goes to the company, 50% goes to the shares. You can purchase companies and corporations can buy spaceships. They can buy them from the bank at list price, choosing their proper type. Or once you get into phase 2, you can buy them from other corporations, other companies and corporations for any agreed upon price that's at least $1. 5 and 6, the phase 3 through 5 spaceships can be upgraded. You can see $700 discount on the big phase 6. So this is like the 4-train turn-in 1830. You have limits to the spaceships that you can hold. I'm trying to see if they're printed on here. They probably are. Yeah, the corporation can own 4 spaceships, independents 2. That doesn't change here, so we don't withdraw it. But then here, corporations can only own 3, but the Asteroid League can own 4. Independents can only own 1 at that point. When phase 4 starts, the Asteroid League must be formed. Over here in phase 3, it may be formed. Well, how does that happen? All right. We'll get to that in a moment because we want to talk about some of the other little bits. I need to swap batteries. Okay. As with all XX games, a corporation has to buy a spaceship sometimes when if it doesn't have one, and if they can't get somebody else to sell it to them for a price that they can pay out of their own funds, they must buy the first one from the bank using everything they've got in their funds plus out of the president's treasury. If the president doesn't have the money to legally raise that cash by selling shares, etc., there's limitations on that. You can't lose the company you're selling that requires it, etc. That player's bankrupt and the game ends after stocks are devalued, etc. Independent companies do not have to own a spaceship until the Asteroid League forms. Once the Asteroid League forms, if you have no spaceship, you must either purchase it using only your own funds or merge it into the Asteroid League using the special rules for the Asteroid League. Okay. There's other things you can buy. You can buy the private companies 0 through 9. I think that's it. Yeah, 0 and 7 through 9. You must pay at least $1, and you can't pay more than the bid value, the printed bid value, which means this is not 1830. You don't have a Camden and Amboy that you can, guarantee you're going to make tons of money off of when you crash it into your company. When you do this, these give you something special. So, for example, if owned by a corporation, it may place a free base on any explored and unclaimed tile. So there's going to be a counter like this for every corporation in their color that says company number 7, and it allows them to get an extra base. An independent company may not purchase the privates. Bases are refueling stations. They can only buy claims. You have to be in range in order to place bases, refueling station, or claims. Now let me talk about these. They have a price on them, right? But you also have to be able to trace a range where one of your ships can reach the location where you're going. There can't be a claim on this space. So this space could be turned into a base, but this one could not. And when you turn it into a base, you flip it over and it no longer produces ship. And you put a little base dinky of your right color on there. And now you've got another place that you can operate from. It can have a used marker on it, but not a used claim. Claims can be placed on any unused mine that you can reach. You don't have to actually ship from them in order to place the claim. And like I said, you can buy 2 of them. Again, there's special rules for special companies. You are limited by your stock pool, which is indicated here. So 1 base, 3 refueling, 10 claims. After phase 1, corporations can buy the independent company claims, as long as both agree, for $60 each. The corporation transfers the money into the independent company. It's a way to get a little extra cash into one of these, especially if you, and to free up one of your claims. Okay, let's talk about the game phases in the Asteroid League. All the rules for the game phases are listed here. And we got to kind of watch them. They're hard to catch. There's not an easy chart for them all. This is as good as it gets. So transshipment points are worth their lower value here. When do they go up? I don't know. They go up in phase 4. You can only buy from the bank. 4 and 2. TSI probe disappears at this point. Growth corporations can start. You can buy spaceships between things. You can buy private companies, independent claims, bases, and refueling stations. You can't buy bases and refueling stations in phase 1. Interesting. I don't know that you want to, but to wreck a company is, I guess, the only reason. Phase 1s go away. Asteroid League may be formed. We'll talk about that. Corporations can own 3. Independence 1. The Asteroid League must be formed. Transshipment points go up if they're higher. Phase 2 become obsolete in phase 5. All the independents fall into the Asteroid League. All private companies and pilots are removed from the game. The phase 6 spaceship can be purchased once one of these is bought. You no longer have to wait until everything's bought out. And spaceships can be upgraded to phase 6. Phase 3 spaceships are obsolete in phase 6. Corporations own 2 spaceships. The Asteroid League owns 3. And I'm really not absolutely certain. I'm not certain that I want that spaceship out of there. It's said to be the more cutthroat game, but it doesn't increase the speed. And I like the flexibility of there being additional ships. I'm not entirely sure what that optional rule is intended to create. It makes it harder. It makes it so that some players maybe can't get these. I've never found them to run out or come close, so we're probably not going to see that. Okay, how about the Asteroid League itself? So in either phase 3 or 4, it can be formed. The guy who owns this can turn this in for the presidency of the Asteroid League. And that will form it. He does this immediately when Phase 3 begins. If he doesn't take it then, he can do it in each operating or stock round at the beginning of the operating or stock round until Phase 4 begins, at which point he automatically is forced to convert it. The Asteroid League starts out with a capitalization of 250 and a 125 par value, 250 being the 2 shares for this. Now, when you cash this in, you lose it, and it has a $30 income. So, on the other hand, you get the Asteroid League moving quicker. If you think you're going to get a lot of the Asteroid League, it's a pretty good idea to hold those shares there. The Asteroid League is going to be considered a growth corporation for normal purposes, except for its par value, which means the money that you buy these shares with go into the company treasury. You cannot buy it before it forms. I think it's 1835 that allows you to buy the Prussian before it actually starts forming. You can buy shares of it, and you quite often want to do that because you have nowhere to put your money because of the way the corporations don't end up coming into play in that game. Okay. Once the Asteroid League is formed, each independent, starting with the Asteroid League president, may immediately join. And when they do so, the owner gets half its remaining treasury cash dropped into his pocket. And they get a 10% share from here. Remember, when growth corporations form, one of these goes into the for sale box, which puts more money into the Asteroid League, but less power. If you don't merge at this point, you can make that choice at the start of each operating round, but not stock rounds. And you must merge if you can't buy a spaceship or if Phase 5 begins. If your independent merges after the Asteroid League, you get the cash only in the full game, but also only if you have a spaceship when it joins. I.e., if you're forced in for lack of spaceship, you could be handing a lot of cash to the Asteroid League that should have gone to your pocket if you had done it a little earlier. So it's a good reason not to wait till the last minute. The Asteroid League cannot place and must reserve a base and 2 claims for each of the independents that it hasn't merged into with, because that might be what it inherits from them, and it has to be prepared to do so. After each merger, if the Asteroid League has more spaceships than it's allowed, it throws the excess ones into the bank, but it can return whatever spaceships it likes. It doesn't have to return what it just got. And the bonus of giving them to the bank, well, it's like in 1830, corporations can buy them, and companies for that matter, but can buy them from the bank, and they might be lower value or something. So that might be a way to keep one of these alive long enough that you can get half the money. Of course, you just spend a pile of money on the thing. Okay, the Asteroid League operates the round it forms if no corporation has begun to operate from a stock price of 124 or less when the league is formed. Any ships that were used already by the miners do not get to get used, though. So you might find yourself without a useful ship and thus not being able to pay out. No special rules about it, like being able to borrow a ship or anything. It's not really a governmental type thing. It is really just a corporation made up of these. The game can end in 2 ways. Player goes bankrupt, or after the entire stock round, operating round sequence, whenever the bank runs out. And that you don't play another set after that. I don't think there's a game where you do that. And stock value plus cash on hand is your valuation. Whatever's in the corporations doesn't count for anything. And that's about it. There's a lot of interesting ideas in it. I'm hoping that, like sometimes happens when I video, that everything just doesn't go the way I expect it to, and that the game is much, much more fluid than it is. But I suspect, given the number of times I've played this, that we will see things come to a halt and nobody buys the additional spaceships. They can. They certainly can. They can half swallow or whatever and start generating enough cash to get to this point. The problem is the small bank. Maybe if you increase that bank, these would be more profitable appearing, and people would go for them. But it's also a very long game. Maybe not as long as 1870, but the routes get really complicated and painful at the end of the game. Just because, well, it kind of depends. If there's a lot of claims on the board, they don't. But when there aren't a lot of claims, people are claiming things towards the end of the game, your routes for the companies that don't have a lot of claims end up varying quite a bit as they just keep getting cut apart. But then again, all throughout the game, you're still exploring spaces when you can. So you find more stuff. So there's a lot of weirdness there. All right, let's end this up, and I think we'll probably start tonight.